Well, hey there. Good evening. I am Hillary Kennedy. I'm filling in for Jill Savage, but I am joined by a familiar face, Blaze News Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson. Glad you're here. We made it to the end of the week.
Yes, we made it. We made it. And we have Hillary to boot. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. All right, so if you have been on the internet the last 24 hours, you know that former FBI Director James Comey likes a long walk on the beach. Apparently, he stumbled upon this seashell formation.
Yeah, he posted this image, 8647, and as my friend Rachel Bovard posted, this reminded her of a teenage girl's diary. See, here's this Mean Girls take on Comey that I think is spot on.
All right, well, joining us tonight is investigative reporter Brianna Morello, who has been closely following the story from the beginning. So, Brianna, I want you to give us some insight. Is this just some casual night at the beach that caught Comey's eye, or is there a deeper message that he's got going on here?
All right. Well, James Comey has a habit of finding these shells by the beach, one even saying Harris's last name on it. I'm sure that was just a natural come about, of course. So I think that obviously this is it's discreet enough where you can't criminally charge him with it, although I would love to see him get arrested. But ultimately, it's very obvious what's going on here. 86, I used to be a bartender and a waitress. I know I have ties to AOC, of course. But we used to talk about 86 all the time. It's when something's gone. You make it go away. You take it off a menu. That's exactly what he's saying here. 8647. Obviously, we've seen 2 failed assassination attempts against President Trump's life. And thank God they were failed assassination attempts. But man, oh man, do these people love to egg on their radical, far-left, mentally unwell supporters to go out there and try to kill the president.
Yeah, you know, Brandon, we were on a chat today with some of the people at Blaze, and one of the guys said, look, I remember getting 86 from a bar. You know, exactly. 86, get kicked out. You know, technically it is, you know, it means you're gonna kill the person. Yeah. People use it metaphorically, but I think what we could say here is when you are who James Comey is, right? when you are James Comey, you were in charge of the most powerful, enforcement body in the country. This is obviously a kind of different thing to post. And I have to say, I mean, it's interesting, the response to me, because maybe the assassinations and because of the weaponization of the deep state, it seems to me there's more awareness of that now than there has been in a while. You know, for instance, one person who clearly believes Comey is sending a veiled signal is the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who voiced sharp concerns about the situation last night, almost right away, on Fox with Jesse Waters. We should watch.
Are you buying that the former FBI director didn't know what 86 Trump meant?
Absolutely not, Jesse. That is a ridiculous and insane statement to make, certainly within this context, but especially coming from a guy who's the former director of the FBI. A guy who spent most of his career prosecuting mobsters and gangsters, people who know and execute other humans and use this exact lingo of 86. This is the guy who's issuing a hit on President Trump, the president that the American people voted for. We, the American people, cannot take this lightly. Whatever your politics, we cannot allow people to get by without being held accountable for this kind of public call to assassinate the president of the United States. The rule of law says people like him who issue direct threats against the president of the United States, essentially issuing a call to assassinate him, must be held accountable under the law.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do.
Okay, so Brianna, are we to believe that the former director of the FBI, former deputy attorney general at the Department of Justice, former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York didn't understand what 8647 represents?
Yeah, I think he knew exactly what it represents. But like you just said, his resume gives him all the qualifications to know how to tread lightly on something, right? So now he can sit there and say, oh, well, that's not what it meant. It was just, something that I saw that caught my eye. And he could give it any type of belief as to what he thought it meant at the time. But the rest of us know that that's exactly what it meant. And I think it's telling. I was just talking to someone on my show about this the other day in regards to the second assassination attempt on President Trump. That individual who is currently awaiting his criminal trial, it's very obvious when you look at his background and all the evidence the DOJ has been putting forward that this is an individual who has a violent past and is looking for all these smoke signals like the one we just saw that James Comey posted on his page, on his Instagram page, right? Those type of people, somebody who, he's accused accused by the DOJ of working with human traffickers to bring an Afghan family into the country because he felt so righteous about the left-wing causes and all of this. And he was also trying to buy a rocket, according to the DOJ. So people like that are going to see things like what Comey just posted, and they're going to go all in on this. So Tulsi Gabbard is 100% correct. We need to take this as a threat, treat it like a threat, and put anyone who threatens President Trump's life in prison.
I agree, because I think you're right. I think there are people sitting around waiting for those kinds of signals, thinking, oh, I'm being told, or I believe that there's a secret message that's telling me I need to do something about this. So he should be held accountable. At the very least, they need to bring him in and do some very serious questioning, and then hopefully it would lead to something. But as we've seen, that doesn't usually happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre given the people who tell us about, unseemly rhetoric all the time are on the left or centrists, quote unquote. And then they're going to defend this and, oh, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Well, we know damn well if the shoe's on the other foot, what's going to happen. But I think the fact that there's been 2 assassination attempts in the last year, and Comey knows that. I mean, I don't usually say stuff like this, but I mean, in this instance, I can see how a rational person would say this is like a wink, wink, nod, nod, given what we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, do you guys remember the story of the Utah man when Joe Biden was in the White House, occupying the White House? There was an individual who was apparently making threats to Joe Biden's life, and the FBI got involved. Not Secret Service, which is the norm. Normally it would be Secret Service. The FBI was the one to go and get a warrant and search this man's home. They alleged that when he came to the door, when they were serving the warrant, that he had a gun in his hand, and they opened fire, it shot him, killed him, and he died there. They dragged his body to the side of the street, and he died on the side of the street. That was the level that the FBI took to protect Joe Biden's life. Will that be the same extent that they go with Comey? I don't know. Obviously, they should execute a search warrant on his home. Obviously, the violent part after that, I'm not advocating for that, but I'm advocating for the fact that when there was a threat on Joe Biden's life, a warrant was served. They went after him. They arrested him. They went through his home to go find anything else that they could find. You should probably do that same exact type of treatment to the former FBI director.
Well, I think it's just another example of how unhinged Democrats have been in the last couple of years, especially this year, burning down Tesla dealerships, the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO. That was something that was such a big deal. Members of Congress storming the Newark Immigration Detention Center, and then President Trump facing 2 assassination attempts. I mean, this just keeps going on, and they're letting it go. They're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, and they often bury the facts, right? We know nothing about the first suspect, who's obviously now dead, but we know nothing about him. We know a little bit about the second suspect, but no one's publicizing much of that information that the DOJ is now putting out there. It's this constant, they've allowed all these people to go after President Trump, and there's very little ramifications for it. Secret Service was an epic failure the first time around, and I would argue they were an epic failure the second time around as well, when they were able to allow someone to be on his property for several hours without anyone spotting him and removing him quickly. And there's also other reports, too, that came out from Headline USA in regards to that same suspect, the second one, that he was interacting with local sheriffs in Palm Beach County just days before all of this, and he had stolen plates on his car, the DOJ alleged, or the local state prosecutors allege, and for some reason the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office wasn't able to make an arrest or even know about this until it was too late. So there seems to be missteps on President Trump whenever it's his life that's at risk, and I actually don't even think that there was just 2 at this point. I think it's fair to say that there's been multiple, according to my sources, there's been multiple attempts to kill President Trump. A lot of these, though, obviously have not been publicized. 2 of them were very well known because they were very open in the public, but the other ones, they keep it hush hush, and rightfully so, because you don't want to antagonize anyone else to go out there and do it.
No, it makes sense, but what doesn't make sense is the rabid nature of it's not just the left. It's actually, I think Comey is indicative of the real problem. I mean, Comey represents the Uniparty. And the kind of hatred that he has in his heart, in the kind of the way in which he talks about. Well, we should show what he said, right?
Yes.
Let's look at what he
was forced to respond.
Yeah, it's a very interesting response here.
Yeah, he said, I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. Does anyone here at this table think he's being sincere?
No.
There's no way.
No.
It's like, what kind of insincerity is that, though? I mean,
Why would you take a picture and post it on Instagram?
Yeah.
It doesn't even match his previous post either. He doesn't have like random beach shells on his didn't have before he deleted his page, all these images of beach shells on the beach. So yeah, I would say really bad cop out. Probably should hire a crisis management team as well as defense attorneys.
Yes. Well, and don't you feel like if you came across something like that and you thought it was funny or interesting, I think a lot of us would maybe text it to a friend or a loved one and ha ha ha, but not post it for the world to see.
Yeah.
And so he was definitely sending some sort of message by doing that, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if he was boomer posting, this is Grandpa Comey, and he's on one side or the other, and he's pissed off, and he just 86, this president I don't like. That's one thing. But again, it's who he is in his position, what he said in the past, the way that he's acted over the years. And that's why, when you see stuff like this, maybe he's just a dumbass and he just, he really did this just fell out in some dumb way. But it's like people are going to look at this and go, there's more here. This is very serious because of the environment we're in. And if you can't see that, I mean, sort of like what Trump said, if you can't see that, as being James Comey, then, you really are a dumbass. And I don't think he's that stupid, although I don't think he's that smart either.
Well, and we have a clip of President Trump also. He sat down with Bret Baier and expressed his thoughts on the matter. Do we have a clip of that?
That meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country has become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he
Well, he
wasn't calling
apologized
for
because he was
violence.
hit.
But
look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to
look,
see happen?
What
do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing. And when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop. And if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency.
Look, I mean, I agree 100% with that. I mean, that was like Trump at his best. And I loved him leaned over there just being really serious. Look, it's like laid back Trump is powerful. Love it.
Yeah, my stomach turns whenever he says it's up to Pam Bondi, though. I mean, Pam Bondi's been a real snooze fest when it comes to going after these gangsters, these government gangsters, as Kash Patel used to love to call them. And for some reason now, we just haven't heard any movement on going after these people who not only have encouraged the assassination of President Trump with their lies and their hatred that they go on cable news to spew every day. But now, I mean, I don't know. I'm not very confident that Pam Bondi's going to make the right move on this. I think that I would love to find the metadata on that photo to see when it was taken, because I think that's really telling. Did he wait strategically for a certain date to drop that photo so that it was a nice line or excuse, or was it sent to him? I'd also love to see those shells and get those fingerprinted to see if he placed it there or if it was somebody else. I don't know if Pam Bondi's really up for that task, but I am.
Well, and Kash Patel was actually forced to say something too. He said, "We're aware of the recent social media post by former FBI Director James Comey directed at President Trump. We're in communication with the Secret Service and Director Curran. Primary jurisdiction is what assess on these matters, and we, the FBI, will provide all the necessary information." But again, we don't really get a sense that anything's going to come from that. But maybe.
Strongly worded tweets.
Right.
That's what you just
got.
got.
That's exactly right.
I love those.
I love your point about the metadata, though. I think that is so smart, and that would be very telling.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I will say the one silver lining is I do feel like there were a lot of people who took this much more seriously than would have in the past, and there was more of a firestorm than there was in the past. And you had powerful government officials at least talking about it seriously, which I do think is actually an improvement. I mean, and Tulsi's saying he should be arrested. So
yeah, I know.
I'll take that. But I'd like to see James Comey arrested for other reasons. But let's talk about another Comey. Maureen Comey, the daughter of the former FBI director. Maureen is the lead prosecutor in the Diddy trial, and this is something that is, taking over the nation. I wouldn't say by storm, but people are definitely paying attention. So over the last 2 days, Diddy's longtime girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, has been on the stand, and she's dropped a few bombshells, sex, drugs, exploding cars, some interesting stuff. Brianna, what kind of case is Maureen Comey presenting here, though, against Diddy?
I would say a weak one, because the charges against him don't include anything related to their sex life and these swinger parties that they would both be throwing. It has to do with sex trafficking and racketeering, which is a huge argument that they have to make right now in front of the jury. Now, what we've seen, obviously, and the defense isn't even arguing this. They, in their opening statement, said, you're going to see a video of Diddy, and he is going to be assaulting his ex-girlfriend, and it's awful, but that's not why you're here. You're not here for assault. You're not here for blackmail. You're not here for domestic violence. You are here for sex trafficking and RICO. And so far, the prosecutors haven't even really made a case against Diddy in any of those instances. I will say that actually they've made a stronger case against Cassie, likely that she committed those crimes rather than Diddy, and here's why I feel that way. Cassie has now openly admitted that she did pay these prostitutes, so the money went from her to them. Now, yes, you could sit here and say that Diddy was likely the one who gave her the money, but you have to establish that Diddy knew that he was giving her money for sex workers. That's a really hard thing. They haven't yet done that or made that connection at all, or even asked her that question, it looks like. Also, you know, there's these text messages that came up during the Friday testimony, and she was grilled on it. In text messages, she's literally telling Diddy that she'd rather hire a female prostitute for one of their freak-offs than a male. Now, that to me is sex trafficking. But again, she's initiating it. That doesn't sound like he's initiating it. And so far, the prosecutors haven't really punched back on that front either. So the defense, although they're, I would say, mediocre attorneys, the prosecutors just feel like they're dropping the ball. And I'm starting to think it's intentional.
Well, I felt like the defense came out really strong, as you said, by saying, hey, he's not a moral guy. You know, you can disagree with his lifestyle, but did he do these things that he's accused of? And so when they started going through the text messages and making Cassie read them on the stand, which how uncomfortable. Yeah. She's very, very pregnant. Just a very awkward situation all the way around. But there are these messages where she is saying things like, I loved the freak off last night, or yes, how about we do one this weekend? And it just paints her as a very active participant, because this went on for years. And so it's hard to say, well, she was being coerced if you've got this much evidence where she's clearly saying, you know, yes, I can't wait to participate, or I enjoyed last night, or whatever it was. Yeah. So it's going to be a tough case to prove. Why do you think we aren't hearing about any of the other victims? Do you think it's just too early on in the trial, or are people afraid to speak out?
I think people are afraid to speak out. You know what's so crazy? Celebrities love giving their political commentary all the time, but for some reason, no one's speaking out about Diddy. I mean, he's criminally charged. He's sitting in jail right now. The trial's underway, and it's crickets from all these celebrities who used to attend his parties. I mean, I remember being in high school and hearing about all these Diddy parties, and everyone would be there who was a big shot. All of a sudden now, we're not hearing any names. We heard Kid Cudi, who's a rapper, but I mean, that's pretty much it. I think there was a football player who was mentioned that Cassie once dated as well, but it's been very vague on the celebrity names. Now, the reason why I'm also bringing that up is they're making it seem like these freak-offs were just between Diddy, Cassie, and a male prostitute, or a couple of male prostitutes. There were other people there. Why aren't we hearing about that? Comey has a habit of burying these big-time names. Obviously, we all know that she was one of the prosecutors for Epstein, for Maxwell during the Epstein case. You know, they claim sex trafficking. Here they are saying, hey, the sex trafficking is a big sex trafficking case. But who were these prostitutes being trafficked to? That's one question that never gets answered.
What's this case all about anyway? Like, what's going on here? It just feels like there's something going on here that we're not seeing.
Yeah, well, they'd have to make the argument that somehow, some way, Diddy was able to, or was trying to traffic these sex workers across state lines. Now, again, we're hearing about male escorts, and we're hearing that they willingly went. So it's not your typical sex trafficking case where you have my empathy. You know, these men claim that they were paid. Cassie claimed that she paid them as well. She admitted that on the stand. So it's not something that they're really arguing on that front. It's just a matter of what was Diddy's involvement in all of this, and they're not making a clear angle on any of that. And I just think it's really telling that they're just sitting here going around giving these salacious stories about what their sex life was like. I don't think it's anyone's real business as to what sexually they were into. I would actually say and argue I don't think that's proper to even be coming up with that. It's more slanderous at this point. But also you got her. Okay, so the best way to understand this too, and so everyone at home knows this is why I feel this way. So, you know, on Friday, Cassie was testifying and she was getting cross-examined by the defense attorneys. Her husband has been there for the most part of all of this. Like you mentioned, she's 8.5 months pregnant right now. She's detailing about how she's alleging that Diddy raped her back in 2018 after they went to dinner. And then she says, and she admits that even after the rape, that they started having consensual sex. But during all of this, she's now dating her soon-to-be husband. So it's a really messy situation. It sounds like there's a lot of swinging activity going on here. I'm just, again, not hearing racketeering, which is a huge crime to allege. And I'm not hearing anything about sex trafficking because they brought these guys onto the stands and no one's alleging it. Now, it's important to note that this trial never would have came about if there wasn't a massive settlement. So what happened was, if you guys remember, Democrats were trying to gun after President Trump. And so what they did is they manipulated laws in the state of New York so that there was no statute of limitation when filing civil lawsuits against anyone you accused of a sexual misconduct type of allegation. So we saw that lawsuit play out against Trump. But then Diddy got wrapped into it because Cassie filed a lawsuit, and then 24 hours later, he settled that lawsuit. Well, Cassie said on the stand that she settled it for $20 million. That's probably a figure he never wanted out there, but she put it out there. It's not just her, though. There was the man back in 2018, Jonathan Adi, I believe his name is, who allegedly shot up the Trump Hotel in Miami. I believe he's currently sitting in jail for that right now. But there was a tape that went around, and he looked like he was mentally off. But we now know what he was saying was partially true.
The truth, yeah.
Yeah, because Cassie's sitting here and admitting that, yeah, they had sex. And there's also now a payout that went into him for $5 million because he alleged that they gave him herpes.